welcome to the deep dive. Let's just confront a truly chilling statistic head on.
Okay.
In just 4 years, something like a quarter of Cambodia's population estimates, or between 1.7 and 2 million people, were killed under the Khmer Rouge.
It's a staggering figure. Really underscores the horror of that period, 1975 to 1979. Led by Pol Pot Salo Sar was his real name.
Right.
Cambodia was subjected to this, well, radical and incredibly brutal experiment: genocide, forced labor, mass execution, starvation, and this systematic destruction of culture.
Yeah, and that's what we want to do in this deep dive, really dissect the horrific tactics Pol Pot and his regime used.
How they enforce that vision.
Exactly. This extreme idea of a communist agrarian society, how they kept control, dismantled everything, and, eliminated anyone they saw as an enemy. We're drawing on detailed accounts here, looking at the brutal tactics of Pol Pot's regime.
And to really get it, you have to understand the ideology driving it. Pol Pot's interpretation of Marxism was deeply distorted.
Very much so.
His vision was this pure agrarian state, purged of all modern influences, cities, industry, capitalism, all gone.
Which leads to that concept of year zero, doesn't it?
Absolutely central. It wasn't just a slogan. It meant rejecting everything about Cambodia's past.
Everything before them was, tainted, irrelevant.
Tainted, irrelevant, and targeted for destruction. A complete, forced societal reset.
How did such an extreme vision even take hold?
Well, sadly, several factors kind of aligned. You had real discontent in rural areas.
Okay.
Plus, the chaos spilling over from the Vietnam War, North Vietnamese influence was significant too.
Right, the regional instability.
Exactly. And so in 1975, after a really brutal 5-year civil war, the Khmer Rouge marched into Phnom Penh.
And established Democratic Kampuchea.
Democratic Kampuchea, the irony is just painful. Nothing democratic about it.
Not even close. And they didn't waste time, did they? Operation Clean the City?
Almost immediately. It sounds almost administrative, doesn't it? Clean the city.
Yeah, but it was horrific.
The forced evacuation of Phnom Penh, all the other cities and towns, millions just ordered out.
Under this lie of re-education in the countryside.
A total falsehood. The real goal was immediate, absolute control. Break all social structures, prevent any kind of resistance.
Just empty the cities entirely.
Completely. And the brutality of it's hard to fathom. People forced to walk hundreds of miles sometimes.
Doctors, teachers, old people, children, everyone.
Everyone. Leave everything behind. March towards these makeshift rural labor camps. No food, no water provided, no rest.
And if you couldn't keep up?
If you faltered, resisted, you were shot, or just left by the side of the road to die.
Just left there. The regime's justification was what? Cities were corrupt.
Corrupted by the West, yeah.
Yeah.
Fundamentally against their agrarian ideal. So empty them. Start from scratch. A blank slate.
But the scratch they were starting from wasn't some utopia.
Far, far from it. These rural labor camps, they were sites of just relentless forced labor. Rice paddies, digging canals, endless agricultural projects.
Based on this twisted idea that hard labor equals re-education.
That was the justification, yes. Purification through toil. It had roots in Marxist ideas about, breaking down old structures, but Pol Pot took it somewhere else entirely.
Right. Rejecting industry, rejecting cities altogether. That's quite radical even for communist thought.
Extremely radical. And the conditions, they were designed to break people.
Tell us about them.
Grueling work, dawn till dusk, often longer. Minimal food rations, starvation levels, basically. Shelter was rudimentary, if it existed at all.
And medical care.
Non-existent, absolutely zero. People, including children, the elderly, were simply worked to death. It was intentional.
And failing to meet quotas, because the quotas were often impossible, right?
Utterly impossible. Failure meant punishment, often death. So this agrarian utopia was actually a landscape of mass starvation and rampant disease. A complete nightmare.
Which brings us to, maybe the most infamous part. The killing fields.
Yes. The regime didn't just work people to death. They actively exterminated perceived enemies. This was systematic genocide.
Who were they targeting specifically?
Anyone associated with the old government, military officials, police, but also intellectuals, professionals, doctors, lawyers, teachers, engineers, ethnic minorities like the Vietnamese and Sham Muslims, religious figures, basically anyone who didn't fit their narrow definition of the pure peasant.
And they set up specific places for this. Like tool sling.
Exactly. Security Prison 21, S21 tool sling. It was a former high school turned into this horrific torture and interrogation center.
How many people went through there?
Estimates are around 20,000. Very few survived. The purpose wasn't real interrogation. It was to extract false confessions through brutal torture.
Confessions to what? Being spies? Traitors?
Often, yes, or simply being an intellectual. The torture methods were medieval, designed purely to inflict pain and break the victim.
And after the confession?
They were taken to the killing fields. These were sites all over the country, basically mass graves.
And the executions themselves.
Yeah.
They often didn't use bullets, did they?
No, to save ammunition. They used whatever was at hand. Hoes, hammers, axes, sharpened bamboo sticks, iron bars, bludgeoning people to death.
No trials, no process. Just murder on a mass scale.
Summary execution, pure terror.
And this terror, it wasn't just directed outwards. Pol Pot turned on his own people, too.
Constantly, his paranoia was extreme, all-consuming. This led to relentless internal purges within the Khmer Rouge ranks.
So even being high up in the party didn't make you safe.
Absolutely not. Accusations of being a spy, a traitor, maybe having connections to Vietnam or the CIA, that was enough.
Enough for what? Execution, labor camps.
Both. Many loyal cadres ended up dead or suffering in the very camps they helped create. It wasn't just about eliminating potential rivals, you see.
It was pure paranoia.
Deep, deep paranoia. Longtime allies could become enemies overnight. It created this climate of absolute fear within the regime itself, everyone watching their backs.
Is there a prominent example of this?
Well, Nuon Shia. He was brother number 2, Pol Pot's right-hand man for years.
Even him.
Even him. Eventually, he fell under suspicion, was accused of treason, and executed along with others. It shows how pervasive the fear and distrust really were. No one was safe.
So, alongside destroying people, they were destroying, well, the soul of the country, its culture.
A deliberate, systematic assault on Cambodian culture and history. They wanted to erase the past, remember, year zero.
So temples, libraries.
Temples, libraries, museums destroyed or desecrated. Anything symbolizing history, tradition, learning was targeted. Ancient monuments were looted, defaced, irreplaceable artifacts lost forever.
And religion. Buddhism is so central to Cambodia.
Seen as oppression. Buddhist monks were specifically targeted, executed, forced into labor, temples shut down. They tried to eradicate religious practice, destroyed texts, artifacts.
Even things like music and dance.
Banned. Traditional forms replaced with revolutionary songs and propaganda. It was a comprehensive effort to wipe the slate clean, culturally speaking.
It's just layer upon layer of destruction. We mentioned starvation earlier, but it wasn't just a byproduct, was it?
It was almost an engineered outcome. Forced collectivization, moving city dwellers with no farming skills to the countryside, purging anyone with agricultural knowledge because they were educated.
It crippled food production.
Completely. The infrastructure collapsed. Their grand collectivization plans were a total failure. Add to that the diversion of any available resources to the regime elite.
And you get mass starvation.
Millions died from starvation, severe malnutrition, and diseases that would normally be preventable.
Like malaria.
Dysentery. Exactly. And because they'd closed hospitals, executed doctors and nurses.
There was no medical help.
None. No supplies, no expertise. A complete public health catastrophe piled on top of everything else.
How did this nightmare finally end?
It began to end in 1979. Vietnam, after suffering border raids and seeing the atrocities, invaded Cambodia.
And they overthrew the Khmer Rouge.
Yes, they captured Phnom Penh relatively quickly. Pol Pot and his core followers fled towards the Thai border.
But they didn't just disappear.
No, they waged a guerrilla war from the jungles for years, supported by various international players during the Cold War, complicating things further. They remained a destabilizing force.
What happened to Pol Pot himself? He never faced trial, did he?
No, he didn't. His influence waned over time. In 1997, he was actually arrested by his own former comrades in a kind of show trial.
By the Khmer Rouge themselves.
What was left of them? Yes. He was placed under house arrest and died in 1998. Officially heart failure, but circumstances remain a bit murky, just before any potential international tribunal could reach him.
So justice for him personally never happened. But Cambodia is still dealing with the legacy.
Oh, profoundly. The scars are incredibly deep. The killing fields themselves are now memorials, stark reminders. The country continues its long process of recovery, of healing, of trying to rebuild.
And there was an effort for broader accountability. The tribunal?
Yes, the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, the ECCC, often called the Khmer Rouge Tribunal, set up in 2006, a joint Cambodian and UN effort.
Did they manage to convict anyone significant?
They did. Several key leaders who survived, like Khieu Samvam, the former head of state, and Nuon Shia before his death, were tried and convicted of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes.
So some measure of justice. even if Pol Pot escaped it.
Some measure, yes. Important for the record, for the victims, even if it can never undo the horror.
Reflecting on all this, it's almost overwhelming, the sheer scale of the brutality.
It really is.
This radical ideology taken to such an appalling extreme, forced displacement, slave labor, systematic murder, targeting culture, internal purges, engineered famine.
It's a chilling inventory of tactics designed to utterly remake a society through terror and violence.
Understanding this, horrific as it is, feels important, doesn't it? Not just as history.
Absolutely crucial. It's about seeing the dangers inherent in these totalizing ideologies, how quickly human rights can evaporate when power is absolute and unchecked.
It leaves you with heavy questions, really. How does such a destructive vision gain traction in the first place? What are those warning signs we need to be vigilant about?
And what's our collective responsibility, yours and mine and everyone listening, to stand against forces that dehumanize, that seek to erase, to destroy?
A vital question indeed. Thank you for taking this very difficult, deep